I would like to introduce Sangi.
Sangi is being produced in a little town called Dina in the district Jhelum in Punjab. I think we've produced about 26 or 27 editions of the paper. It's the only paper that's been regularly produced in Pohtwari or Pahari, depending upon where you are and what you call it. Most of us around there would call it Pohtwari, but the production of Sangi itself comes out of another experiment by immigrants who live in the United Kingdom, from a little paper that was produced called Chitka that came out around 1993. It was a small, humble thing which tried to establish a very simple principle. That was our desire to write in the language of our mothers, our mother tongue, because nobody was writing it. In fact, not only was nobody writing it, but it was culturally and socially suppressed. In fact, I have been thrown out of offices when I worked in Pakistan as a journalist for speaking in my own language as opposed to English. And that memory of me walking into an office and asking a question in my own language and being thrown out has never left me. We have, of course, many of our children, when I was a young kid, we were beaten up for speaking our own languages at school by the teachers. We were caned or made into cooker positions. So in a sense, the question of the production of Sangi was, let us bring our language in the prose, into the written form, to a mass audience, to break out of this suppression and the inferiority complex under which we'd been pushed. And in a sense, the starting of Sangis, the very first edition, was under a sort of a scream, if you like, the title was called Huku Huku Hai Hai. It was almost a cry of anger and anguish, that why is our world being ripped apart by such injustices as being thrown at the hands of the Anglo-American Empire? But we wanted to say this in our own language. Not a big thing if you're used to saying it in English or Urdu, but an awfully big thing if you're used to not saying it at all, or not writing it or reading it. So we wanted to bring about a magazine, a current affairs, social, political commentary, not all in the agreement to necessarily the editorial policy, but one that gave an independent voice to those in their language of those who didn't really speak very much of their own language. So one of the ideas behind Sangi was to produce a paper to give dignity to the speakers of that language, because after all, we learn to understand the world not in English, not in Urdu. And that, for that matter, we are neither against English nor Urdu. We did not learn to understand the world in which we live in somebody else's language. In fact, it's like trying to dream your own dreams sitting in somebody else's dreams. You can have that person sit in your dream. You can never sit in their dream and have a dream yourself. And the writing of our language was like that. And also, in a sense, Sangi tries to decolonize our minds as well. We believe that, I certainly believe, that the reason that we are denied access to education, access to the knowledge of the world in our mother tongue, is a colonial legacy left by the British, carried on by the rulers of Pakistan, in a sense that they've imposed upon us not only a foreign system of governance, but a foreign language in which we must try to understand the world. And for that reason, it's wrong. And we want to be able to do something very simple, which is the human right and civil right of all of us. And that is to write in our own language.
Can you explain alphabet development?
The Sangi started, as I mentioned, from Chitka in 1993 as a small, humble affair. Poetry has been written in our language for a very long time, but prose, it wasn't the case with prose. And when we tried to write in our language, we were confronted by many problems. And one of those was that in order to write in a language, you need a system of writing. English has a system of writing. French has a system of writing. Arabic has a system of writing, Urdu has a system of writing. What I mean is that there are sounds in these languages and there are approximate and appropriate letters to denote those sounds. So you've got A for A, B for Ba, and so on. So of course, in our language, because prose hadn't been written into it, we were using the nearest script, certainly for the last 600 years, was the Persian script. And the last few hundred years, certainly, what little was written in the Urdu-based script, if you like, which was a built-up of the Persian. And we were trying to write our language using all the characters of the Urdu language. Whilst we could write most of our sounds, there were many sounds we couldn't write. And we were confronted with the problem, how do we do it? Now, we didn't even know initially what all the sounds were. We came across many problems. We couldn't write the sound ra, kana, in our language. Yes, you could make an approximation and somebody could read it, but in one word or two words you might be able to write kana and somebody would read it in context and work it out, but not when the same sound was repeated in many different words, and especially those words which have not yet been written. It's not always possible to read quickly in the context and try to work out what word it is, and it's not a very effective way of reading. And the same applied to words such as car, ter, pan. I mean, of course, in this last word we have two problems. We had the ra sound, we had the pe sound. So we started to try to work out which were the sounds that couldn't be written. And of course we turned to Punjabi, which was a lot more developed than us. We picked from Punjabi the main practice that they were using. That was two dots on top of a noon. We tried to resolve that issue by using that and we couldn't. It didn't seem to make sense. So we then embarked upon a very long period in search of an appropriate system of writing our language. And of course that brought a lot of conflicts for us as well. I was not happy with the actual system now we have adopted. There were some differences we had, but it didn't matter really. What we needed was a system. Whether it was right or wrong is another issue, because no system is ever right. Every system is under review, constantly under review, because it's ultimately the usage by people who determine in practice whether it's appropriate or not. And in a sense, the struggle for the development of a system of writing propelled us forward a little bit as well. It forced us to produce 6 or 7 chitkas, which enabled us to experiment in lots of different ways. And one of the major experiments which I feel very saddened that we lost on was the experiment for the development of a phonetic alphabet. Because we are not very developed in our literature, and there is very little literature in the sense of prose and novels and things of that nature, because we've not have that many people who actually write it, and a lot of us are not very educated who are our prime target audiences, because one of the things we wanted to do was to say, well, okay, how is it that women who can read the Quran are illiterate? How on earth has that happened when Urdu is effectively based upon the Arabic script? It's only the style of writing, which is the Persian, the Nastaliq development. It's only the style of writing. How is it possible that you can be literate in reading the Quran yet you're illiterate? How? That was another reason that propelled us forward. And that was that because there's a divorce between the language of our religion and the language of education and the way that we speak. And hence we tried experiments. We tried simple phonetic experiments that we wrote words only based on the Arabic alphabet. We didn't bring any other character in, like te or anything like that. And with less than an hour, women were able to read. Very basic word. And that showed us that actually getting rid of illiteracy required the development of materials in mother tongue. In fact, the development of mother tongue all round. And hence, what I said I felt a little sorrowful was that we wanted to offer a phonetic alphabet, even better than English. Better than, because we were, by not having a phonetic alphabet, we were taking the burden of all the previous developments of languages, putting them on top of ourselves, and of course our new burdens as we develop the alphabet. And as you can see from the development of our alphabet, what we've actually done is modified the existing practices within Urdu and Arabic and taken them, we believe, one stage further. And what would have happened had we done the phonetic alphabet, some of the modifications would still have been used, but nobody would have needed to spell. You know, you would have only had one sound for one letter. What a fantastic system we would have. Wouldn't have to think, how do you write tota? Is it a toin or is it a te? How do you write salim? Is it a zwad? Is it a zain? Is it a... what is it? You'd only have one letter, ze. But unfortunately, we didn't succeed. And one of the reasons we didn't succeed in the phonetic alphabet was that at a conference in Manchester, where we tried to propose, this is many years ago, the phonetic alphabet, a friend got up and said, how are you going to write Ali if you take out N? And another friend quite humbly said, look brother, if you can write Allah with Alif, why can we not write Ali with Alif if we take out N? That resulted in a pretty major conflict within the meeting. Another friend spoke and he said, look, when Gujaratis write Ali, they do not use N. When Bengalis write Ali, they do not use N because they have the name Ali. And when in English you write Ali, you do not use N. Therefore, you can actually have a phonetic alphabet. But we concluded that getting into a religious argument would probably be detrimental to the development of the language, let alone our own health. So we decided to accept all the baggage of all the previous languages and go with it. What I'd also like to say, there are some friends who are very unhappy with our system of writing. To those friends, I would just like to say, please, write at least, even if you're unhappy in our system. Don't write in our system, but write. If you want us to publish your writing in our system, or even in your system of writing in Urdu, we'll do so. But we will, next to it, put our own system, because we're also developing database for the coming generations, so they can study our mistakes and then learn from that. And in that sense, I do not believe that it is possible for us to write our language. In fact, I do not believe it is possible for the Punjab to develop without a defined system of writing which children will learn. It's not possible to write everything Punjabi in English or in Urdu. Of course, it has been written in poetry, but not in its mass development. No other language has been able to do it, and perhaps there's no reason why ours are any unique in that sense.
We'd like to explain some more the division between Pahari and Pohtwari and how we can get together and work.
I think that there is no division between Pohtwari and Pahari. There is no division between those people who call their language Pohtwari and those people who call their language Pahari, or those people who call their language Hindko, or those people who call their language Punjabi. I think that there are elements, and there are always these elements, who try for their own economic and personal aggrandizement to try to create certain divisions. Now, I think that there are so few of us, certainly across the Azad Kashmir and Pohtwar belts, who are trying to promote the mother tongue, that it is a crime against all our people for us to be divided. We should all be united on at least one point agenda. Let us make mother tongue compulsory in our respective areas. But when we deal with language, we have to deal with the pains of our people. and our lives are full of suffering. And there are different sufferings, some more and bigger or less than others. In Kashmir, when the ceasefire line we look at, it runs right through the heart of the speakers of Pahari and Pohtwari. And in a sense, the unification of the language requires the wiping out of this ridiculous line that has been used by, such powerful people to create wars and fight. We don't need it anymore. Our language movement's development needs the elimination of the ceasefire line so ideas can flow across it, so we can write in it and we can learn what's written on the other side. And of course, similarly, when you come into Pakistan, there is not a possibility for the development of Pohtwari without the development of Punjabi and of course Saraiki. Now, should we fall apart on a name of our language? I say no. There is no reason for us to fall apart because people don't care. You call it what you like. There are of course general cultural zones. They don't have to have any antagonistic divisions in these contradictions. I think what we should do is to share each other's stories, and we should write now. How do we do all this? Why writing? I think it's the base on which our educational system has to be rebuilt and freed from the bondage of colonialism. And coming back onto the Pohtwari and Pahari thing, the Pohtwari Pahari language movement really, it's actually a very fragile bud even now. It's only just coming out. Yes, mass media there is an explosion of the mass media. Many films are being made, TV stations are coming on, radio stations are coming online. There is a small explosion of works and websites coming more and more about us and our lives. Some in Urdu with a little bit of sprinkling of their own language. Some like ours, which is exclusively in our language plus English. And in a sense, it goes to show that we have broken out of the inferiority complex, that people now value their own language much more so than they did 13, 14 years ago. But what it still needs is the compulsory establishment of a system of governance and education in our language. For that purpose, we need to be together. We don't need to have the same government or be in the same country. A language doesn't respect borders. People are forced to respect borders. Most people don't respect borders. But my question to anybody who wishes to create a division within the movement is to say, look friends, we are so few. We cannot survive without each other. If we were in millions strong, then there might be a room for having a little scrap here and there. That doesn't mean we don't have to have disagreements. We must have the maturity of thought to be united for this single objective of trying to ensure that mother tongue is a compulsory medium of at least education, if not state.